All right, we're back down here in the Chiefs pit. Richie Petty, Mark Petty, Timmy Petty. We're going to take you through a little history of the racing helmet from NASCAR, the evolution, and we're going to go step by step here. We're going to pick them up and we'll go with it. So Timmy's going to start right here with what they call the polo helmet. And they raced this back in the early 1949, 1950s. And if you look at it, Timmy, if you would.
Yes, sir.
It's there ain't much protection there, and but it was more than just running without anything. It ain't a bad little helmet. Our grandfather Petty, this is one of his helmets, so this goes back to 1950. And
it's set up here in the house for
oh yeah, and it's kind of it's not in very good shape, but it still goes back. But I can't imagine driving them big old.
So that's late 40s, early 50s.
Yes, 50s, yeah. Early 50s. This was the best. This was the best technology that they had at the time for racing.
All of them had them big old goggles,
and I think it goes back to the open wheel guys. This is what they were running, so they incorporated it back to the NASCAR guys.
Turtle shells.
Yeah. All right, so we moved on up from the 50s. We got a little bit better. This is like a fighter pilot helmet, and this is what they would run in the mid 50s, early 60s. And Grandfather Petty, this is another one of his helmets. He actually, I would say 55, early 60 right there. That's when he would run this style. And there's a lot more protection here. Right here on it comes down. And this is a solid shell. This is getting into what you call a real helmet. So I would have felt comfortable with this one. The polo helmet, I wouldn't feel comfortable riding a bicycle with that one. Okay, so behind Mark, we have what you would have run in the 60s. And that's just a basic helmet, a little bit more than the fighter pilot, but this was actually made for motorcycle people and racing people.
Well,
and it's a real deal. I mean, it's a helmet, so we're getting more technology for safety as we go. And
this actually has the Snell
rating, yeah.
Which is
right. That's the head injury.
Oh, look at the straps, man.
Now this helmet would have been our dad Maurice. His the one he used to race with back in the 60s. He run like 27 races in the Cup side. Had his best finish was a third.
That's awesome.
And so this is actually his one he run with.
I didn't realize that.
Yep.
You'll have to grab that one. I can't.
I'm gonna stick this on the ground. All right. This we're getting into the 70s, and
on up to the 90s.
Well, this one right here. This is the 70s, and this is made for racing. This is it's a Bell helmet, and it was. I actually raced with this one. This was the one I raced with up until 89, 88, somewhere there. This is one of my helmets I used. But this one goes back to Richard. He raced these from mid 70s into early 80s. This is what he would run. And this was one he actually threw in the back in the warehouse that we picked up and we went racing with. It's yeah, well,
no,
we had it tricked up a little bit. So there you got Lee's, Maurice's, and now there's Richie's helmet. That's when I raced a little bit. Now this is getting into the 90s. We're getting a little more technology, a little bit more safety.
Who was the first guy to bring
the open? I think Tim Richmond.
Closed face.
Wasn't Tim Richmond one of them?
Is it here with Bodine?
Bodine, yeah, because they come out.
Might want to argue with us on that.
I don't know.
They were the first ones, and it was more like a motocross. Remember that thing come way out there?
Anybody that knows, give us a follow.
Well, most of you drivers back in them days, they were against the closed face because they couldn't get a sense of the car. It changes everything because it changes your hearing. And when you're driving a car like this, in the old days, I mean, you could smell somebody come up on you. You could hear them. This would change the driver's perspective of where people were at on the racetrack. So it was a big change when they went to these. But
especially for folks that have been driving for
yes, exactly.
20, 30 years.
Used to the open face stuff, yeah. Right. So this one here is 92. It's actually a Richard Petty helmet. And it's signed.
That was really used, wasn't it?
It's signed.
That was the Farewell Tour hammer.
Yeah. It's signed by Maurice,
Hammer,
Lee Petty, and Richard. And you're not going to get two of those autographs And if you did have them, they were rare anyway. But there's the three amigos right there, Petty Enterprises. But that's
From the farewell tour.
from the farewell tour,
92.
Richard's last year. So that was pretty modern technology at the time. And we're going to get up to the 2000s. And this was one Mark raced in the trucks when Mark was driving the trucks. And it's a little bit different. As you can see, they come in here with this little side here bringing air because it would get so hot you couldn't breathe. So they brought this little air thing in here so you could pick up air from the side.
Fresh air device. I don't need to hold it.
So it's basically the same
my
helmets. It's a little bit lightweight. You got your radios on it and all that.
So now moving forward, which we don't have a sample, but we'll get one later. They've gone to carbon fiber, some other specialty.
And some very fancy paint jobs.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
This is
They've been doing that for 15, 20 years.
Oh, yeah. Longer than that.
I
Yeah.
think maybe even Kyle started.
Yeah,
one of the
they had
first
some
people
guy
that-
that used to paint them all the time. And what was his big slogan? I can't remember the guy's name now. But he said, "Still on the planet." That was his deal.
Is that right?
Yeah, and
Mark-
he would write them on there.
Mark let me borrow this helmet. I took it to 96 there when I went to Bonneville and did a little land speed record thing. Mark let me borrow his helmet because it was the most newest helmet we had in the house. So I took that one. So that was that one.
And the reason why it's yellow and black, a little shout out to Safety Clean,
Yes.
Clean Harbors.
Yes,
Buddy
yes.
Judy, they
They
gave
sponsored
us a
me.
little money for sponsorship.
They
for the
sort of
car.
helped us all the way
Bought
through.
us uniforms, bought us helmets. Was really good to us through the years.
So there's your evolution of the racing helmet from the Petty family. Lee Petty, Maurice Petty, Richie Petty, Mark Petty, and obviously Richard Petty. So, there it is.
What little bit we know.